Remote working has become an essential element of the hybrid workplace. Indeed, it has quickly become the only workplace for many knowledge workers. Using Microsoft Surface Hub 2S, workers can whiteboard new ideas, collaborating in real time with colleagues, whilst effectively communicating through voice, video and chat. The Surface Hub 2S is not only a great collaboration tool, but it delivers the familiar experience of a personal device when Windows 10 Enterprise is installed, unlocking the use of any application. The addition of a fingerprint reader increases speed of sign-on and security. The 4K display resolution creates natural engagements. Collaborating with colleagues feels lifelike, and when combined with the infinite canvas from Microsoft Whiteboard, inspiration and ideas flow completely within this digital environment. Experiencing Surface Hub 2S as a remote participant means that you are included into every discussion. The onboard speakers and the far-field microphones connecting you to every comment and conversation as if you were there. Real world, real interaction. Surface Hub 2S bridges the digital and physical divide in today's hybrid workplaces, further enhanced by the global availability of Microsoft Surface Hub 2S 85-inch in 2021.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining our first call in the series of 4 webinars highlighting Surface Hub in today's hybrid world. So thank you for joining us today. At Microsoft, we are committed to continue looking at different ways on how we can support you all with the right information and collateral to enable you to engage with your customers. So in today's session, we'll be focusing on the Surface Hub 2S in the educational environment. Together with first-hand knowledge from CollabTech's unique perspective, we're going to share stories from successful deployments from all around the world. And as we all know, these are challenging times and hybrid working models for employees are emerging. Some businesses will continue to work remotely, some will return to the office space, and some will choose or be required to adjust to a mix of the two. So to meet these needs, companies are turning to technological solutions to help employees transcend physical spaces, thereby dissolving the boundaries between in-office and remote workers. In a recent study by Gartner, 82% of survey respondents intend to permit remote working some of the time as employees return to the workspace. So in order for this to work and ensure businesses are still productive, leaders need their teams to build meaningful relationships, to be able to share ideas and work securely towards their common goals. So additional information on these insights and much more can be found in our recently published Surface Hub ebook and supporting infographics, both of which we're going to share with you after these webinars. So for today's session, don't forget to post any questions you've got in the live chat box and we'll look to answer those. And now I'm going to pass you over to Andrew and our team from CollabTech. CollabTech are one of Microsoft's expert training providers on modern solutions with Surface and Microsoft 365. They're here today to tell us about education in today's hybrid world. So over to you, Andrew.
Great. Thanks very much, Mel. Thank you. Thanks very much for the warm welcome. It's great to be back and presenting again to our partners for the first time this year. We really enjoy these events, so thank you for everyone attending. Today we've got partners from all around the region, stretching from New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Thailand and Korea, just to name a few countries. So welcome aboard, everyone. I'm Andrew Fletcher, I'm the SVP International for CollabTech, and today we have a range of presenters and content to cover for the topic today of Hub in a Hybrid World, specifically for the education sector. Now, to get started, if you could cast your mind back to 12 months ago, for most countries, it was pre-pandemic. Can you remember what it was like? According to UNESCO, by the end of March 2020, over 1.5 billion pupils, or 87% of the world's student population across 165 countries, had been affected by school closures because of COVID-19. And still today, it's estimated over a billion learners are still having education interrupted by the pandemic. In Australia, for example, K to 12, there have been many experiences of interruptions across states and territories. Although the extent and period of the closures have varied significantly across jurisdictions. For example, in early May last year, there was only 3% of children in Victorian government schools in attendance, in contrast to Northern Territory, which had returned closer to normal level up to 79%. I think it's fair to say education was disrupted on a global scale. COVID-19 required many teachers and parents and students to rapidly adjust to new adjust to new modes of learning. And in a matter of weeks, schools had to find different ways to implement viable alternatives to traditional modes of teaching in a physical environment. The degree to which they've been successful differed substantially and depended on numerous factors, but adapting was considered a considerable achievement in itself. A survey from Pivot Professionals Learning showed that 2/3 of all survey respondents at the time of the survey, which was second week of April, had already moved to distance learning in response to COVID, including 65% of schools in Australia and 70% in New Zealand. But another quarter said that schools were still preparing to move to distant learning. So it became apparent that many schools would need to provide an alternative to traditional classroom-based learning in term 2. School principals and teachers went into overdrive to prepare for the transition to different learning model and develop the infrastructure to support a hybrid learning environment. For institutional learners, one of the biggest challenges in the shift to remote learning was ensuring staff readiness and building educators' confidence for remote teaching. Today is a great opportunity to position Surface Hub 2S to future-proof lecture and session delivery and encourage interaction between educators and students with this. The Surface Hub enables educators anywhere with the all-in-one nature of the digital whiteboard, the meetings platform, and being a collaboration device. So now I'd like to introduce you to Daniel Acott, one of our senior collaboration specialists, to help us take a closer look on how to manage the hub and some successful educational use cases that can foster a hybrid learning environment moving forward.
Over the past 12 months, the way that educators have been leveraging technology has really evolved to keep up with today's more hybrid environments where we've got some or all of the participants engaging remotely. And the really interesting thing is we've actually seen an uptick in engagement and better student outcomes despite this seeming barrier of participants being remote. So what I'd like to do today is show you guys a few examples of how we've seen educators leveraging the Surface Hub and Teams to deliver really engaging and vibrant and dynamic lessons that have seen better student outcomes than before. The first thing I want to talk about is deployment and management. Surface Hubs are mobile devices. They come with a roam stand, they come with a battery, so you can set these devices up and then really just let them roam over the campus, or you can deploy them to an educator's home office, and we've seen that happen a lot of times. However, as an IT administrator, I still have complete control over this device, even though it's roaming around the campus and I'm not physically in front of it. And we can do this with Microsoft's modern management solutions, things like Intune. So using Intune, I can configure this device, I can customize the configuration, I can install different applications, I can manage updates, I can monitor the hardware health of this device, I can reset, and I can even remote wipe this device without having to touch it at all. It's zero touch management. In fact, the only time that we really need to touch these devices as administrators is when we're deploying them out of the box. And even this can be streamlined and simplified using something like a provisioning package. I can have that provisioning package on a USB key, I can pop it into the bottom of the Surface Hub, boot it up, and then the Surface Hub will read that configuration profile for this individual device from that USB. It will enroll itself into Intune, and then from there it will start to download that configuration profile and start updating itself. So it's a really quick and easy way that we can deploy these devices into the field, into a hybrid education environment, and then manage them remotely without having to touch them. Now, I want to show you guys a quick demo of just how quick and easy it is to enroll these Surface Hubs in Intune. If you've got a hub that you haven't enrolled already, it's quite simple. And I'm just going to change the view here so you guys can get a better look at what I'm doing. Let's go to that one. So from the settings, I'm going to go to Surface Hub, Device Management, and then here I'm going to hit this little plus button. All I have to do to enroll the Surface Hub into Intune is put in the device account. I'll just paste that in there instead of having to type the whole thing out. Okay. Okay, I put that account in and then I hit continue. It's that simple. It's going to come back and ask me for a password prompt, but we're not going to do that today, obviously, because I don't want to change the way that the Surface Hub is working in the middle of a presentation. But it really is that easy. You create your configuration profile, enroll the Surface Hub, and then away you go. You've got a hub that is now set up exactly the way you want it, and you can give it to the students and the educators, and they can, achieve some really good results with it. So let's just get out of that. So next, let's talk about the next step in the journey, which is educators. I want to show you guys how I've seen educators using the Surface Hubs, and I think they're fantastic in an education space. A big one is that they can be booked. They're bookable resources, which means that if you've got a Surface Hub that's roaming around campus, it can be used by either teachers or educators because there aren't going to be any clashes. You can get a timetable and book the device. Now, for educators, Surface Hubs are sort of like a big personal mobile library. So when I say that, it means I can walk up to any Surface Hub, I can sign into the device, and then all of my teaching materials are here and ready to go. I can pull them down straight from my OneDrive, or if I've got different whiteboards that I've prepared previously, I can just walk in, sign into a Surface Hub, and then pull up a whiteboard. Here we go, we're ready to go. Now, the screen real estate of Surface Hubs is designed so that I can have several applications on the go at the same time while I'm on a Teams call. And in an education space, this means that I can use 2 different lots of materials at the same time to create lessons that are a bit more engaging and a bit more interesting. So one example I like to show is if we have a historical timeline on one screen, and then we can open up something like maps in the other, and we can mark up as we go. Now, naturally, I can be on a Teams call while I'm sharing this screen so my students can see what's happening, and they'll get a little shot of me in the corner as well so they can hear me talking and we can interact. But say as we move away along the timeline, get up to the Battle of Britain, we can update this by inking onto the maps. And all the students can see what I'm doing and what I'm talking about in real time. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing that we've seen people doing, and it just makes lessons a bit more interesting, less PowerPoint karaoke. Now, we can change the topic quite quickly because all of our material's there and they're ready to go. So we don't need to spend a lot of time jumping between different things if I want to talk about a different topic, or if I want to bring up different examples in the same lesson. It's quite quick to switch through things. Now, we can also mark everything up. You saw how I could mark up our timeline and our map before. We can mark things up on pretty much any application on the Surface Hub. So if we're talking about aerodynamics here, we can increase the interaction and the knowledge by being able to talk about what's happening. Let's call that gravity there. What I can also then do is use the whiteboard to expand upon ideas, because I can mark these materials up on the whiteboard without marking up the original, as you saw me do before. Let's do that. Let's say gravity. Then what I can do is I can invite other people to this whiteboard. I can be talking to my students in real time during a lesson, and I can call the student out and say, hey, I'm going to share this whiteboard with you, and I want you to jump on there, and I want you to mark up this image so that you can show me that you have a good understanding of what's happening. And the student from their device, wherever they are, can then mark up this whiteboard, and they can show me that we have an understanding. So it's a really quick way that you can suddenly become in the room with a student as you're talking to them, and you're interacting with that student one-on-one. Really interesting thing. Now, what I can do at the end of the lesson from this whiteboard is I can send an email of a snapshot, a summary of this whiteboard of today's lesson with today's notes that me and the other students have drawn. And I can send that to the entire class straight from the Surface Hub account so that they can have notes, personalized notes from today's lesson. So it's a really handy thing that we can do. Now, it's worth talking about how educators can set up the Surface Hub in different scenarios for teaching. If we've got one scenario where the educator is delivering a lesson straight from the hub, very doable. I'll show you guys how that would look now. So you'd have me, the teacher, coming through the top right here while I'm marking up the whiteboard, and I can look at the students in real time. I can answer their questions, they can come off mute, and we can chat and we can mark things up on the same whiteboard together. Now I can take that a step further too by having a Surface device running Teams in the lesson, or you can have any device really, but I can be running Teams on this device and I can be monitoring the chat while I'm teaching, while I'm talking to my students. And the really interesting thing about this is they've seen a really huge uptick in participation and students asking questions when they can do it in a chat in real time. And there's two things that happens here. One is I can see the chat question coming in. People don't have to come off mute, they don't have to stand up, they can just put their question in the chat. I can see the question and I can respond to it directly to the student. In addition to that, all of the other students can also jump in the chat and they can help that student out. So we're getting that real sense of collaboration there, and it's been fascinating to see how much engagement has grown in that sort of scenario. Now, we can expand upon our current setup by bringing in something like a camera and a streaming mixer. So the camera's facing me, I'm looking at the students while I'm talking. I don't need to be on Teams on the hub because I've got this camera connected to my device that's running Teams, and I can connect it with an AV mixer so that I can look, we can mark up, and we can also mix up the views that the student sees, just as you've seen me do in this presentation, to make the lessons really dynamic and interesting. Now, all of this cost for the layout of a studio like this is insignificant when you compare it to the cost of a full auditorium. And the interesting thing is that the results and the learning outcomes for the students has actually been better, quantifiably better, using a smaller, more intimate situation like this where we're leveraging Teams in the Surface Hub to create this really interesting collaborative environment. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how students can use these Surface Hubs. I really like using the Surface Hubs for research. I'll do this a lot if I have to read something for work, to figure things out. And this is what I do. I open up Edge. I have my information here. And then I'll open up the whiteboard. So I can start reading through this information. And I can basically get my ideas from what I'm reading, and I can get them organized. So let's say I'm a student, I'm studying economics. I've got my whiteboard here. This is my assignment. I've got some ideas of how I'm going to structure it. Now I'm doing some reading. All right, I can say I want to take a snapshot of this paragraph and this graph. I find them really interesting. This is exactly what I want to use in my assignment. I'm going to take a screenshot. I'm going to use the pen. Just crop which bit of that I want to keep. All right, we'll put this over here. And then from here, I'm going to use the highlighter on the Surface Hub to highlight these bits of the paragraph that are most important to me in this assignment. Now, I want to keep a reference where I got this information, so I'm just going to copy that URL and paste it into the whiteboard so I can return to this website at any point in time straight from the whiteboard. Now, if we want to collaborate, so we've started with the research phase of any assignment, we're getting organized, we're getting our information, I can collaborate with my group assignment members. We can all jump into this same whiteboard. I can post it straight to Teams. I can create a little channel for us, or I can just jump onto a Teams call and share the whiteboard with them, and we can all start to get our ideas on there together. We can use something like a template, say a Kanban board. We'll put that over there. And here is where we can start delegating the tasks for the different group members. We can use color-coded sticky notes to determine who's doing what. Job 1, job 2, job 3, and job 4. And then because all of the team members in my group assignment have access to this whiteboard, they can update this as they go. It's a living document that we're all sharing. We can talk about what we're going to do, we can jump off, and then we can start doing work. Students can then move on to the next phase, where you can start to author things. You've got the full Office suite here. These are Windows 10 devices. So I can jump onto Word, I can pair the Surface Hub with something like a Bluetooth keyboard, so ergonomically I can sit down and type out my assignment. I can publish this. Now, I can either save this on the Surface Hub, then go back and continue to work on both of these documents from my device, from anywhere, or a different Surface Hub, or alternatively, if I'm ready to go, I can publish this. I can submit this assignment online via the Edge browser. So you can see how students can use the Surface Hub for every single step along the way, from research to collaboration to planning to authoring to submission. So yeah, look, that's a few demos. I hope you guys can take something away from that. I think it's fascinating how Surface Hubs fit really well into almost every aspect of an education space, and especially in today's hybrid environment. So yeah, I'll throw it back to you guys.
The global pandemic has forced universities, business schools, and many other educational institutions to reimagine the way they educate learners. With the Microsoft Surface Hub 2S and Microsoft Teams, educators can deliver engaging and effective learning experiences easily and with impact. Students and educators alike can build a complete portfolio of learning materials, such as session recordings and homework projects, easily accessible for review and reuse at any time from within their Microsoft Teams channels. The 4K camera ensures that seeing the educator deliver the session aids understanding, but also creates contextual memories and increases information retention. The ability to develop ideas and theories live and in front of students means that flat, two-dimensional information is brought to life using the digital whiteboard and infinite canvas, combined with face-to-face contact through Microsoft Teams video. Real world, real interaction. Surface Hub 2S bridges the digital and physical divide in today's hybrid workplaces, further enhanced by the global availability of Microsoft Surface Hub 2S 85-inch in 2021.
Hi everyone, Kalo from CollabTech here, coming to you from sunny Taiwan today. I wanted to talk a little bit right now about the hotly anticipated Surface Hub 85-inch. Most of the demos and videos we've looked at today, especially Dan's great little education demo, was on the previous, first version of the Surface Hub, which was the 55-inch. But thankfully, and to many people's great joy, the Surface Hub 85-inch has arrived. Unfortunately, I don't have the 85-inch with me in my home office just yet. So I'm going to share a quick video where my colleague Chris has been kind enough to put together a few key points around the Surface Hub, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the impact of the Surface Hub as an 85-inch device now, and how that can help us, I guess, deliver better education outcomes for a few key reasons. So one moment, I'm just going to get that video up for you guys. All right, so what we can see here now is the 85-inch and 55-inch Surface Hub side by side. Now, what we can see now is the 85-inch and 55-inch side by side. I want to demo a few things here though, or have Chris demo for me. As we can see now, he's using the whiteboard on the 55-inch Surface Hub with a full frame of himself and some advertising material. Now he's doing it with the 85-inch. I think you can see. Apologies, I was sharing the wrong screen, guys. My apologies. I'm just going to share the correct screen now and start the video again for you. All right, so what we can see now is the 85-inch Surface Hub and the 55-inch Surface Hub side by side. Now, you can see there's a pretty dramatic difference. When you do measure screen size, you measure from corner to corner, so it's not just a 35-inch difference between the 55 and the 85. Oh, sorry, a 30-inch difference. It's a much bigger difference in terms of total screen space. Here's Chris on the 55-inch, full framed with himself demonstrating, and we'll talk a little later about why that's important and how it is good to use the Surface Hub that way. Now here's Chris in front of the 85. Immediately we can see how much more of an impact we're having. It's a much bigger screen, it's a much bigger workspace, and Chris is able to do more, and us as viewers or students are able to absorb more. We're able to see more of what's going on, and we're able to do things like what Chris is doing now, which is demonstrate really high quality imagery. In this case, we're looking at a biology lesson, and we've got a great cross section of a cell. We're able to rotate, look at different componentry in that cell. We can look at the details of things while still engaging with Chris as the educator. So he's still in frame. We still feel like it's a real environment. We're not watching a static image or just a screen share. We're able to really see what's going on. Now, this is the best way for us to go forward. What we're also able to do with an 85-inch comparative to a 55-inch Surface Hub is that we're able to use more screen space. So now what Chris is doing is he's demonstrating the image that we looked at before, and he's also making notes on the whiteboard. Now we can do this on a 55-inch, and you saw Dan do it and use some of that real estate really well. What's happening now though is we've got this gigantic workspace. So it's much more like a lecture theatre where we've got a huge whiteboard or a huge screen available, and we're able to just do more. So we've got a bigger impact with what's available. This is a side-by-side comparison, which is really common in education. So he's talking to what's happening there and writing about it at the same time. So what I'll do is I'll just finish that video up and talk a little bit more about how we set this up. So we looked at the better impact of the 85-inch hub. Let's talk a little bit about how we set up an environment so we can use the 85-inch hub to the biggest advantage we have to get the most impact out of that bigger screen. Now, the first thing we want to do, as Dan mentioned, is probably not use the hub as our calling device. We want to use the hub as a demonstration device. When we want to screen share, we can share that through an AV mixer or through a mixing device plugged into your PC. These are easy to obtain and easy to set up. And we can also look at how we mount the hub so we get the best view of the hub in the room. Now, the Surface Hub 85-inch does come with a rolling stand designed by Steelcase, just like the Surface Hub 55-inch does. That's one option. We can also wall mount it, but it is worth keeping in mind it's a very large device at 85 inches, so it is a lot heavier. At times, the wall won't be able to support that weight. So our third option is we can use the existing legs on the stand, remove the rear end of those, and have it mounted flush against the wall, but supported by the leg stands. This is an excellent sort of option when we do want to wall mount it, but yeah, we don't have that ability to hang it directly on the wall. Setting up that space is really important. Setting up the right lighting is key, setting up the right audio is key, and setting up the right environment. So as I said, we want to look at maybe having multiple camera angles, having those angles pointed at the hub and the instructor so we can engage with them. And we want to look at making sure that we can do things without reflection on the screen or without sort of interference. I want to quickly let you guys know that now's the right time to start throwing questions in if you have any. We're going to jump into a Q&A section next where Daniel and I or any of the presenters can help answer questions around the Surface Hub, whether that's about modern management and having the hubs looked after in an IT environment in these modern universities and schools, whether that's about setting up this home studio type environment that we're talking about, or whether that's about the specifics of the Surface Hub itself. You know, what are the specifications of the device? How have you guys seen them used in the past? What's the kind of market demand for this, etc., etc. So please feel free to throw any of those questions in now, as we will jump into Q&A in a minute. The last thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit about budget and setting up a home studio to use the Surface Hub in this new world that we live in. It's not too expensive. The most important and most expensive part of the entire setup will be the Surface Hub, but it's incredibly important. We've already talked about how much value it adds. The additional expenses can be scalable. So we could look at simply using a Surface device, like a Surface laptop, as your camera, microphone, and speakers, pointed at the Surface Hub to give you a similar presentation as Chris is doing here. Now, the video quality and the sound quality won't be as good as what we've looked at with Chris and Daniel's demos, but it'll still be completely reasonable. You've got really high quality cameras, mics, and speakers on Surfaces. The next stage you could look at is to get an additional camera, whether that's just a small webcam, something from maybe Logitech or BenQ or one of these other providers, or whether that's a proper SLR type camera where you've got a mirrorless device and you're looking for a really high quality studio type feedback. You can then also add in an AV mixer. Dan mentioned this a little bit, so you can switch between the feed from the hub, multiple camera angles, and the sort of teacher or lecturer view that we're looking at here with Chris. This is all scalable. I'm not going to talk about specific prices, but I can say that we did the entire studio for Daniel in around a week with a really high quality result, multiple mixers, etc., all for a fraction of what it would cost to set up any type of auditorium environment. So we will move now into the Q&A section. I'd love to hear questions from you guys around what we've been looking at, whether that's the setup of the studio, as I said, the in-tune environment, anything like that. Happy to jump into those questions now and start to answer. So I'll quickly check over in the Q&A now. Haven't got anything in there yet, guys, so please feel free to throw anything in. Dan and I are here ready to answer questions. Was there anything you wanted to add in, Daniel, at this point, or?
No, that's it, Kay. I think you covered it really well. I think there's that really important point that the outlay for a really decent looking studio really isn't that much. You know, especially when you compare it to the sort of larger cost you get when you try and sort of build an auditorium, you know, that's going to seat hundreds of students compared to a studio that you could potentially service thousands of students for. So I think that's a really interesting point. I think an important question that I can imagine is on most people's minds is the availability of the 85 in the APAC region. Yeah, do we want to answer that? Do we have any details about that?
Look, the Surface Hub 85-inch is now becoming available. We're expecting our first 85-inch to arrive any day now, which we're very excited about. As Hub geeks, we really are looking forward to playing with it. And they should become publicly available shortly after that. You can talk with Cinex directly or one of your other or Ingram Micro, wherever your distributor is, about that availability as soon as this is over, and find out when it's available and when you can start looking at demoing them or getting them out to clients. But it's very soon. As I said, we're expecting ours any day now. Something else that may be on people's minds, at least currently while we look at the new device, is the flexibility of it. Does it have all the functionality and specs of the 55-inch? And do you want to answer that one, Dan, and let them know about some of the key functions, etc., on the 85?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the operating system is pretty similar to the 2S. It's going to function in the same way, but with your hardware sort of peripherals, you've got things like a 4K camera, you've got far-field microphones that do a really great job of pinpointing the actual speaker's location, and we've been surprised by how large of a room you can put a hub in and still just use the onboard built-in mics and speakers for your video conferencing. You've got 20-point multi-touch. And this is a really important thing because with the size of the 85-inch, you can have several people in front of it working on the device at the same time. With that whiteboard, it sort of becomes more of a wall or a mural, you know, that you can have a large group of people sort of collaborating on and marking up and contributing to. So being able to read all of the different points of contact simultaneously and cleanly is a really important thing.
Yeah, for sure, Dan. Something else worth mentioning, guys, is we talked about setting up a studio, and I do think that that's a great option and probably your best option when you are trying to use the hub in an education environment. But the hub is a flexible device. It's a boardroom in a box. You can wheel it into a room and use it for a really high quality VC solution or education solution straight away. You don't need to worry about setting things up. If you need to do just-in-time education or training, if you need to do just-in-time video conferencing, etc., both the 55 and 85-inch hub are ready to roll for that and are very easy to use. They're essentially plug and play once they're set up on the network. So no questions as yet, guys. Is there anything else you want to cover off, Dan, or do you want me to hand it off to Mel to do a little bit of a wrap up?
I think hearing from Mel would be good.
All right, no worries. So look, I'll hand back to you, Mel. Thanks a lot for your time today, guys. And if any questions come up in the next couple of minutes, do throw them in the chat. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Daniel, Kaylo, and Andrew, and the rest of the Collab Tech team for presenting today on how Microsoft Surface Hub can play a part in today's hybrid world. And don't forget, if you want to find out more, please just reach out to your local Surface Hub distributor, and they can definitely help you out and have a chat with what your opportunities are. Just a reminder that we actually have 3 more great sessions coming up, another one next Wednesday and the following Wednesday after that. We've got on-the-spot collaboration, banking on collaboration, and serving the public. So make sure that you register for the other 3 because they'll have great information on segment and industry information. So thank you very much for coming today, and we'll send out some details after these webinars. Chat to you soon. See you later.